Title: You are listening to the radio during a sudden werewolf resurgence. The world is quieter now to quiet. Not the kind of peace you'd hope for, but a silence that buzzes beneath the skin. The kind of silence that follows something terrible and warns of something worse. Once there was structure grids and systems, schedules and seasons, but those things collapsed one after the other, like ribs breaking inward. We thought we'd adapt. We always think that. But nothing adapts to hell. The climate died before the people did. One day it was heat waves. Then the crops failed. Next, wildfires ate whole counties in a single afternoon. Floods rolled in where the rain never should have fallen. Rivers reversed or disappeared altogether. I remember the summer the Mississippi turned black, steaming like a wound that wouldn't clot. I remember watching a tornado touch down where snow should have been. Seasons blurred, winters too short, summers too long, and everything in between just wrong. Now it's always a kind of fevered dusk, like the sun is stuck bleeding out. Behind ash-colored clouds, the skies don't roar anymore, they growl, and the wind brings more than weather now. I live on the edge of what used to be St. Louis, or maybe it was Kansas City. I'm not even sure anymore. Most of the road signs have been pulled down and burned for heat. The cities are skeletons. Glassless windows gape like mouths mid-scream. Skyscrapers have collapsed inward or burned down to warped steel and rebar. Strip malls and grocery stores were picked clean years ago. You'd be lucky to find a single expired can of beans under the bones of what used to be aisle 6. There's nothing civilized left. Governments crumbled in the early days, first denial, then panic, then silence. Emergency broadcasts stopped. Evacuation zones failed. The National Guard deployed and disappeared. There's rumors of safe zones to the north, bunkers run by scientists, or soldiers, or maybe just good liars. But no one's seen them. No one's come back. What we have now are fragments, loose coalitions of survivors that either help each other or hunt each other. Scavenger caravans that roll in with rifles and leave with what little you had left. Cults clinging to the promise that the end was always meant to look like this. And lone voices like mine still clinging to these old transmitters, hoping someone, somewhere, is still listening. Electricity is a memory. The solar grids are fried. EMP pulses or lightning storms did the rest. Fuel is rarer than food. The only light you get is firelight or moonlight, and God help you on the nights. When the moon is full, that's when they come. We don't know where they came from exactly, or maybe we just stopped asking after a while. At first, it was just rumors, campfire stories, walking on 2 legs, villages torn apart under a red moon. Then came the screams, then the disappearances, then entire settlements wiped out in a single night, bones stripped clean, doors clawed off their hinges, blood soaked into the dirt so deep it never dries. Some say it's a mutation something in the atmosphere, or a virus cooked up in a dying lab, released into the chaos. Others whisper about curses, about ancient things waking up, because the world forgot to be afraid of them. All I know is this: when the night howls, you don't run, you don't scream, you hide, and you pray. The werewolves, if that's even the right word for them, aren't what the old stories said. They're not just beasts, they're smart, they plan. They know how to tear through defenses, how to set traps. I've seen them wait stalking a place for days, testing weaknesses. This isn't random hunger, it's a campaign. The full moon is no longer a date on the calendar, it's a death sentence. Every month, survivors count the days with more fear than food. Some barricade underground in old metro tunnels or basements lined with sheet metal and salt. Others just light fires and hope the smoke keeps them at bay. But nothing keeps them out for long. The earth is raw, now peeled back to its nerves. The forests are either burned or crawling with things that don't belong in daylight. The oceans are sick. The animals have fled inland, acting like they know something we don't. The birds are gone. We've lost the rhythm of life. No more alarm clocks, no 9 to 5s. Days are measured in whether you live through them. Nights are measured in what they take from you. Hunger is a constant. So is grief. So is fear. And yet, here I am still broadcasting, still winding up the crank on this old transmitter, still telling these stories to whoever's left to hear them, because silence is worse. Silence means the monsters win. And maybe, just maybe, if someone hears the siff, someone knows they're not alone, then maybe they'll keep going. Maybe we'll outlast the night. It's broken, bleeding, and filled with teeth. And all we have left are each other and the choice to not give in. If you're out there, keep listening, keep breathing, and for God's sake, stay out of the moonlight. I remember the first time I spoke into the microphone. My voice was raw, trembling like the wind through a broken window. It was the night the power grid failed for good October 12th, 2028, though I barely registered dates anymore. All I knew then was that the world had gone dark, and I was terrified. I was 32, with a wife and a daughter I hadn't seen in 2 years. I had worked as a local DJ, night soul and blues, dancing shadows in neon clubs and thought I knew solitude, but that was nothing compared to this. Now I'm 40, though I stopped counting birthdays after the third winter that dipped below zero. My name is Mara Ellis, but around here I'm just the voice. I've lived through every stage of this collapse. The droughts that mummified rivers, the wildfires that hollowed out forests, and the floods that drowned towns so suddenly people never had time to flee. I've seen grain silos explode with dust, watched entire poultry farms burn themselves to ash when spores from mutated crops ignited in the fields. I've lost more than I can name. Each day begins the same way. I climb the rusted ladder to the roof of the old radio station, where the solar panels still sputter half-heartedly in the washed-out sunlight. I check the battery banks, tighten loose wires, and pray the inverter doesn't give out. Then I crank the hand generator, and the transmitters crackle to life, pushing my voice into the static that blankets the wasteland. I survive by scavenging. I've learned to read ruined landscapes like maps of long-forgotten battles, overturned water, tanks that may still hold droplets, collapsed garages with rust-eaten gas cans, abandoned pharmacies with locked steel cabinets begging for pry bar. Attention, I forage at dawn before the heat becomes unbearable and the dust devils spin like frantic dancers. I wear a gas mask patched together from motorcycle gear, and my boots have soles so thick I barely feel the jagged glass beneath. Food is a ritual of desperation. I ration dried mushrooms I found in the subway tunnels, tins of sardines traded, 4 old books, and scrounged protein bars that taste like cardboard, but they keep me alive. Water is harder. I process river runoff in a makeshift charcoal filter, boil it over a propane stove that I guard with my life. I've watched people break open their own water purifiers for parts, only to die of thirst a week later. I don't judge them. I envy them. Hope isn't a word I use lightly. It's earned in small victories, a fresh rainstorm, the sprouting of moss in a crevice, the faint call of a distant survivor answering my broadcast. My job, if you can call it, that is to remind people they're not alone, to stitch together fractured lives with stories of endurance, snippets of music that still crawl through the wires, and the occasional recipe for edible weeds. I've built routines into the broadcast. I read letters, burned smudged, water-stained scent over the airwaves. I offer advice on how to seal a tin can with tar, how to barter with nomadic traders, how to sleep when every twig snap could mean death. Sometimes I speak into the microphone and there is only static in return. My heart clenches, but I keep talking because silence on these wavelengths is worse than the lament of a dying world. When I find a reply, a voice scratching through my whole body hums. Just once I heard a cracked baritone say, "Mara, I'm here." It was a man named Jonah, living 2 states over. We shared coordinates and promises. We've never met. Yet the memory steals me in my loneliest moments. Responsibility weighs heavy. I once tried to leave this place behind, packed my bag, slung a rifle over my shoulder, and walked toward the horizon. I thought I'd search for communities rumored to survive in the Rockies, living off geothermal springs. But as I walked, I missed the hum of the transmitter, the rhythm of its crackle in my veins. I missed the purpose, so I turned back, past derelict towns and charred orchards, back to this skeletal station that has become my home. I carry ghosts. My wife, Lena, was working at a relief center in what used to be downtown Denver when a freak tornado anomaly of the warped climator threw. The center collapsed, and I never found her. My daughter, Anya, was only 5, with wide brown eyes and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes in spring. I still have one of her drawings, a stick figure family, beneath a blazing sun. Stuck it to the wall next to my cot. Sometimes at night, when the generator's silent and the world is hushed, I talk to that picture and apologize for not saving them. Grief visits like a frost, slow, inevitable. Sometimes I wake in those early hours and the weight of loss nearly suffocates me. When it does, I step outside and stare at the horizon until my lungs catch again. That horizon might hold disaster, but at least it moves. It reminds me that the world ruined as it is still shifts. I've seen others crumble under loss. Survivors who lose hope become desperate, turn violent, start raiding settlements, leaving bodies in their wake. See, there are shadows on the walls when the candles flicker. I've held a friend who begged me through tears to let him go. He said he'd rather die than face another winter. I couldn't do it. I carried him back to the station on my shoulders. He didn't make it. Resilience in the face of night. Despite everything, I've learned to feel wonder again. The first morning, I heard a cardinal sing amid the rubble. I laughed until my sides ached, a single red flash against the ashes. Once, I found a sprig of wild mint growing through cracked pavement. The scent hit me like a memory. It tasted like hope, like home. Every broadcast ends with a plea. Stay safe, stay human, keep the fire burning. I don't know if anyone hears me, but I believe they do. And I believe that as long as I speak, as long as I survive, the spark remains. But sometimes small is all you've got. Who I am now, I'm no longer the person I was. The world stripped me. Bert took my family, my city, my old life fan, left me holding onto a microphone in a crumbling tower. My voice is gravel and steel. My heart is cautious but unbroken. I'm a scavenger and a storyteller, a witness to the end and a herald of the next dawn. If you're listening to this right now, know that I carry your story with me. Every shout, every whisper I receive becomes part of the tapestry I weave in the static. I am here. I am the witness. I am the voice in the dark. And as long as I can breathe, I'll keep talking, because stories are the last sanctuary we have. And as long as there are listeners, there is still hope. The Missouri River used to roar past St. Louis like a beast unleashed. Now it's a fractured scar in the earth dry, cracked and dust-choked. The riverbanks, once lush with willows and cottonwoods, stand bleached and brittle, as though scorched by the sun's unforgiving glare. For 4 years, not a single cloud has opened to feed it. The riverbed lies bare beneath feet that crunch on parched clay. I talk about the drought every night on air because it's the backbone of everything falling apart. Temperatures climbed steadily after the collapse of the last major climate accord in 2030. They say the average summer high is now 50 degrees Celsius, 122 degrees Fahrenheit in these parts. But numbers don't capture the way heat seeps into your bones, cooks your breath, and makes your eyes sting. The sun is a godless overseer, punishing us for sins we didn't commit, yet can't escape. We've measured soil moisture at less than 5% in once arable farmlands. Groundwater levels have fallen by more than 60 meters in the past decade. Rainfall has shifted northward, carried away by atmospheric currents, warped by melting polar ice. The jet stream's collapse has locked weather patterns in place, this region baked under endless sun, while monsoon-like rains drown others. It's not just the lack of water. Without moisture, dust storms rise in walls 50 meters high, swallowing towns whole. The so-called black blizzards carry toxins from irradiated landscape-forgotten nuclear sites, rotting chemical plants. Choking on that dust is like breathing shards of glass. Hospitals once reported scores of pulmonary collapse cases every week. Now there are no doctors left to tally the dead. Wherever there's vegetation, even dry grasses, wildfires dominate. Lightning strikes from electric storms ignite fires that spread across thousands of hectares, leaping rivers that used to check their advance. I interviewed a team of firefighters 2 springs ago over the airwaves. They called themselves the Ember Wolves. They drove armored trucks into infernos, trying to protect what little remained of small towns. They lost half their crew in a fire whirl the size of a football stadium. No one has heard from them since dot smoke from those blazes drifts hundreds of kilometers, turning the afternoon sky into a blood-red haze. Solar panels generate only a fraction of the electricity they once did. The soot blocks much of the sun's energy. Batteries run cold. Radio transmission windows shrink. Every night, I pray the station doesn't black out before I finish my broadcast. It's not just drought and fire. There are weird, lethal storms that come without warning. Acidic rain, laced with industrial runoff and mutated algal toxins, falls in sheets. It corrodes metal, strips paint from cars, and burns flesh. I still have the scars from walking through a mist, one sprinkling me splotches of red that never quite faded. I stay under cover now, listening for the telltale sizzle on tin roofs before I venture out. Flash floods follow those storms. Parched earth is hydrophobic. When rain finally comes, the water runs off in torrents rather than soaking in. Streets become rivers, ripping up pavement, washing away homes, sweeping people into ravines. Last month, I tracked a group of refugees who lost half their number in a single flooded culvert. Houses that survived drought were obliterated by the deluge. I've met survivors in every shape and shadow. Sometimes they're friendly caravans, sharing purified water or trading vital parts. A solar battery here, a pressure valve there. I will always remember the Daybreak Collective, 3 ragged souls led by an ex-engineer named Salim. They rigged ancient wind turbines near the Ozark foothills and carved out a safe zone for 50 people. For 2 weeks, they gave me a roof, fresh bread, and conversation. Then came the werewolves. They attacked at full moon, tearing apart tents, ripping out generators, dragging survivors into the night. Only one of the Daybreak 4 returned, Salim, half-clad, bloodied and broken. He stumbled 20 kilometers through the dark, guided by my last broadcast. He died 2 days later, a faded smile on his lips. I've met raiders, 2 armed gangs, running tribute stations, demanding fuel or food in exchange for passage. They wear scavenged combat gear and paint their trucks black. Their motto, give or die. I once tried to bluff through an encounter, posing as a missionary group with blessed water. They shot my water barrels anyway and left me with a firing squad salute. I limped back here on foot, my pack empty and boots shredded every day. Resources dwindle further. Water tables are at crisis levels. Most hand-dug wells have gone dry. The hoarded water behind old dams evaporates or seeps away in microscopic fractures. One depend on a small spring 3 kilometers from here its source, a natural aquifer cooled by underground streams. I guard its location closely. Someone else finding it could mean another massacre. Food is worse. Agricultural land crumbles into desert. Only GMO supercrops engineered for drought resilience survive, but the seeds cost more than most can afford. Black markets trade in counterfeit seeds with disastrous yields. I've tried vertical mushroom farms in basements harvesting oyster and shiitake on coffee grounds, but the yield barely sustains me. Protein left me a lifetime ago. I've eaten insects, rodents, even the occasional rat. Fuel is myth. Abandoned gas stations hold only empty tanks. Biofuel processing units rust in fields. Propane canisters are the currency of survival, passed caravan side like gold. I trade scavenged electronics for a single tank of camping stove, propaning up, for 3 days of boiled water on the air. I break down the science by candlelight. Folks, the drought's not a fluke. It's a new baseline. Think of Earth's climate like a spinning topsteady in a circle. We've wobbled it. As ice melted at the poles, the axis shifted, the spin slowed. That weakened the jet stream. So weather systems stall, which means Where it's dry, like Usit stays dry, and where it's wet, it floods. Sea surface temperatures have hit a record 30 degrees Celsius globally. Warmer oceans feed stronger storms, but there's less moisture on land to balance evaporation. It's a perfect storm of thirst and fire. I mentioned data carbon parts per million, ocean heat content, atmospheric circulation models, because knowledge can be a lifeline. Even if no one out there can verify the numbers, it reminds them that this is a crisis with causes we once understood. Causes we allowed dot. Every sunrise brings a new obstacle. Solar output drops under smoke. Mechanical parts corrode in acidic rain. Scavenged materials get scarcer. The easiest pickings are gone. I've watched the barter value of a single AA battery triple in 1 month. My leads on salvage sites dry up. The rusting hulks collapse, get scavenged, or are swallowed by wildfire. Social structures unravel. Trust is a liability. When you meet someone new, the first question is, which side are you on? Even broadcast listeners must be vetted by code phrases and schedules. Last week, a voice claimed to be an old friend and turned out to be a trap. They hijacked frequency, lured me into a false sense of security, then triangulated my signal to send raiders. I barely escaped with minor burns and a bullet in my shoulder. Every crisis compounds the last. Drought gave way to fire. Fire crashed into flood. Flood ushered in disease. Cholera and dysentery thrive where sanitation is non-existent. Clinics collapsed in the storms. Vaccines expired in heat. A single infected child can ignite an epidemic that sweeps through a settlement in days. On the air, I offer do-it-yourself solutions. Water purification, layer sand, charcoal, and gravel in a 5-gallon bucket. Pour water slowly through, boil for at least 2 minutes. Food preservation, harvest edible weed slams, quarters, Perslanon, sun-dry them on a mesh rack, store in airtight containers with desiccant packs. Chemical hazard signs. If rain rolls in with a vinegar smell, suit up with a plastic poncho and mask. Seal seams with duct tape and wait out the downpour. But advice only goes so far when the elements themselves conspire against you, as if the climate weren't enough. There's the resurgence of those beasts. They thrive in the chaos, feasting on weakened prey, breeding unchecked. Their packs move like armies harvesting livestock when it exists, then moving on to humans. They've learned to follow smoke plumes, hitting refugee columns as they head for rumored safe zones. Their biology is a twisted response to environmental mutation. Some scientists hypothesized that extreme heat waves caused epigenetic shifts in canid DNA magnified by scavenged human gene therapies once stockpiled in biotech labs. Whatever the cause, they're apex predators, wired for one thing, killing now. On full moons, I don't just warn of dust storms, I issue curfews. Find underground shelter. If you're in the open, lie flat and cover your face. Don't move until the howling stops. Last month, a pack tore through an old subway station turned bunker. They dug through reinforced doors. 23 people died. Their bodies were found half buried in rubble. Each broadcast ends with a countdown to the next potential storm or lunar event. I map thermal anomalies spotted by amateur drones. I track low-pressure systems over the Rockies. I read barometric pressure over my improvised sensors, because knowing is the thinnest line between life and death. And I remind listeners, if you hear nothing but static, that means danger's near. Stay silent. If static gives way to emergency, tone 3 beeps, 3 beeps, 3 beeps, move. Underground, trust no open spaces. This is the world Mara Ellis lives in, where climate collapse and supernatural horror intersect. Each day is a negotiation with heat, with hunger, with human cruelty, and with creatures born of our own tampering. Survival is a battle fought on every front. Yet, even now, in the heart of catastrophe, we dig in our heels. We jury-rig radios. We share knowledge. We carve out pockets of refuge. The crisis grows, but so do we. We learn, we adapt, we endure. Tomorrow, I'll detail the thermocline inversion that's fueling the new dust storms and how to weather them. I'll interview Dr. Perez, the last known climatologist, hiding in Boulder. I'll share coordinates of freshwater sources mapped by drone, if they still exist. Because in a world spiraling into chaos, information is our last weapon. And as long as I can transmit that weapon, I'll keep fighting this war on the airwaves. Night falls early these days, and with it comes the cloying darkness that blankets everything in dread. I sit before the transmitter, tapping a finger against the microphone's metal base. My stomach growls a reminder that my last ration was 3 days ago, and the next may never come. Water is first to vanish. The little spring I guard gives only a few liters each dawn, barely enough to wet my lips. I collect dew on scavenged tarps, but most mornings the air is too dry even for that. Yesterday, I drank half a vial of liquid chlorine meant to disinfect water and nearly paid for. It in agony. My kidneys burned, and I vomited until there was nothing left in me but bile. Food, too, is a crumbling promise. The last tin of lentils sits on my shelf, its label faded beyond recognition. I've broken into other caches' collapsed pharmacy, kitchens, a farm silo half buried in sand, but every time I find hope, it turns to dust or rot. Protein bars pass their expiration dates in months, then days, then hours. I can't stomach the thought of another insect omelet, though last week I ate one made of crickets and felt faintly proud for under 60 seconds. Fuel is myth. My stove's propane canister is empty. The spare tank I scavenged from a convoy months ago leaked somewhere in transit, and the patch I slapped on is now useless. I light fires sparingly, only when I must. Boiling water is a luxury I can't afford. Twice this week, I've narrowly escaped raiders. They come in blacked out. Trucks, engines roaring like beasts. They juggle gas-powered floodlights over their shoulders, scanning for smoke or movement. The first time, I dove from my rooftop perch into a pile of broken beams below. My leg snapped against a steel girder, and I limped 2 kilometers back to the station as they searched my roof for signs of life. The second time, I thought I was safe in an abandoned church once, a sanctuary, now a corpse of stone and pews. I'd rigged a low-voltage buzzer on the back door, set to warn me of intruders. But the raiders were clever. They cut the buzzer's wires, came in through a shattered, stained glass window, and nearly caught me as I crept toward the transmitter room. I shot out the window behind them glass, cutting my palms dropped 10 meters into overgrown weeds, and ran until the forest swallowed me. Survivalist militias are worse. They're armed to the teeth, convinced that violence is the only law. Left, they set up roadblocks, require tithes of food or water, and execute dissenters on the spot. I've overheard one gang christen themselves purifiers, believing they're cleansing the world of weakness. Their emblem an iron. Fists crushing a droplet of water speaks for itself. I've evaded their patrols by moving only at dawn and dusk, by wearing a cloak of mud to mask my scent, and by never staying in one place more than 2 nights. Then I heard the whisperer glimmer in the static. Listeners prize anything that breaks monotony. A rumor of a buried reservoir, an underground lake sealed beneath the remains of an old research complex. They call it Echo Lake, said to contain millions of liters of pure spring water, protected from the sun's wrath by layers of earth and ancient concrete. The coordinates came across in broken voices north of Jefferson City, beneath a hill once, called Prometheus Peak. Hope boiled in me. If the rumor were true, it would shift the balance. A source like that could sustain dozens, maybe hundreds. Echo Lake could become a sanctuary, a real safe zone for the displaced. My mind raced. Caravans could travel under radio escort. I could direct scavengers to build pumps and pipes. Water could flow again. Agriculture might restart. Maybe, just maybe, this world could learn to live again. But the rumor has claws. I've chased more false leads than I can count. Echo Lake might be a trap another raider scheme to lure desperate souls into ambush, or worse, a werewolf. Breeding ground where the beasts gather to drink and hunt. The line between myth and massacre blurs here. Trust is a luxury I can't afford. For every Jonah who answered my broadcast with kindness, a dozen wolves in human skins have tried to rob or kill me. Every friendly caravan could be carrying undercover purifiers. Every frantic message could be code for an ambush, yet I ache for connection. After weeks of silence, my heart leaped when I heard Talia's voice crack through the static, a soft baritone singing an old lullaby. She said she was holed up in an abandoned farmstead, 17 other survivors. They had seeds to share and wanted to trade for my technical know-how. My first instinct was to pack up and go bring what little I had to barter. But self-preservation smothered the impulse. I asked for proof, described the farmhouses. West Gable, Talia stumbled, hesitated. I didn't answer her questions. I signed off. I lie awake at night, wondering if I was cruel, if Talia was real, if her lullaby was genuine, if I turned away a lifeliner, a bullet waiting to find me on some lonely stretch of highway. Meanwhile, the climate's fury grows, more erratic. Last week's heat wave peaked at 56 degrees Celsius, 133 degrees Fahrenheit. The mercury lit like a fuse under my skin. The radio towers, cooling vents warped, and transmission quality plunged. I broadcast with sweat dripping into the electronics. The signal sputtered. I prayed the tubes wouldn't fry. They didn't, but just barely. The next evening, a microburst rolled in a sudden downdraft of storm-driven wind. It ripped panels from the tower and turned the surrounding fields into a whirlwind of dust and debris. I radioed nearby scavenger. Teams. Low shelter now. Steel structures. Underground bunkers. No one answered. I left a recording. If you can hear this, hold on. I'm coming. I set out at dawn, cradling replacement panels on my back. The landscape had changed overnight. Gullies carved, where none existed. Trees snapped in half like kindling. Chunks of pavement peeled away. I found no survivors, only the skeletons of burned-out vehicles and the faded remnants of a makeshift campsite. A single shoe lay half buried in dust, the small toes painted red between storms. I've scoured ruins for any trace of Echo Lake. Old military maps hint at a subterranean research facility built during the Climate Accordzo project, meant to store water inland in case of emergency. They called it Project Deluge. The facility was supposedly decommissioned when civil unrest turned to civil war. Engineers bombed its entrance as the world burned. I found one lead, a rusted access hatch hidden in an abandoned quarry. Coordinates scribbled in smeared ink on a torn technical manual. The hatch was welded shut, but the seams were brittle. Beneath it, I heard the distant drip of water, a heartbeat under the earth. My pulse synced to it. I marked the location and headed back to the station, heart pounding not from the trek, but from what I might find. Could Project Deluge still hold water? Could it hold the promise of a tomorrow? I pressed forward toward the roar into the tunnel's throat. The slope grew steeper. My legs slipped on algae. Water surged around me, lashing my chest. Above, the hatch clogged with debris as raiders tried to reopen it. I heard the crack of wood giving way. I kept moving. My hand brushed against a metal lever embedded in the wall. It looked like a release for a valve. I pulled it, straining against corrosion. It let loose with a groan. The tunnel shuddered. Water whooshed past, carrying me down in a whirlpool of noise. I struck out, arms flailing, and found a ledge. I clung to it as the water receded behind me, draining back toward the reservoir above. In the dim light, rust-flecked, I saw a ladder, rungs, half submerged. I climbed, coughing as foam poured from my mask's edges. At the top, a small grate stood between me and daylight. I pried it open with trembling hands, hauled myself into a rocky alcove. Concrete fragments rained around me. I sprawled on the hot rock, gasping. Above me, the sky was just beginning to brighten with dawn's first blush. The reservoir's roar softened as water receded to its new level. I looked back at the entrance. No raiders, no beasts, solely scattered debris and a single hoofprint in the dust. I hauled the pump and parts out, following a narrow ledge I'd noted on my original map. It brought me to the quarry's rim at sunrise. Exhaustion crashed over me. I dropped the pump and knelt by the reservoir's edge. I cupped my hands, scooped up ice-cold water, and drank. A single sip filled me with relief so profound it brought tears. Behind me, in the growing light, I saw movement on the rim figures emerging from the trees. Raiders, survivors. My rifle lay in my pack, unloaded. I raised my hand in greeting, voice hoarse. Don't shoot. It's me, Mara Ellis. I found it. They halted, a group of 5, ragged and wary. One stepped forward, Talia, the lullaby singer. Her face was streaked with soot and hope. In her hand, a lever section like the one I'd pulled gleaming in the sun. You weren't lying, she whispered. Behind them, others trickled out. The Daybreak Collective's survivors, Salem's daughter, Salem's name on their lips like a promise. They stared at the reservoir as though it were a miracle. I let the world shift beneath my feet. The reservoir was ours, our chance to fight, back the drought, rebuild a sliver of civilization. I understood then that survival wasn't enough. I had to live for something bigger. And as the sun rose fully, painting the water gold, I knew the turning point had come. From witness to architect, from scavenger to savior. The sky wasn't blue yet, but for the first time in years, it promised change. Dawn's light crept over the quarry rim, paling the burning sky to gray. The reservoir shimmered like a wound stitched but still fresh. All around me, survivors knelt to scoop its water, faces heavy with disbelief. I stood back, my chest hollow, as if the reservoir's discovery had drained something out of me. Even as it promised to fill us, the pump rigged to the hand crank assembly funneled the first trickle of water into barrels. Talia and two others turned the crank in unison, muscles trembling with effort. I shouted instructions through raspy breaths, slow and steady. Sealed the barrel lid before it tips. A single misshapen barrel rolled and shattered against the rocks, sending cold water spattering like a jewel. Talia bent and licked at it, laughing through tears. It was a sound I hadn't heard in years, pure, startled joy. By midday, we'd siphoned enough to fill 10 barrels. We formed a bucket line, up the quarry slope, passing precious water, hand to hand. I watched each face glow some lean children who'd never known a calm dawn. Some gray-haired elders who had seen the world's slow collapse. Every drop they passed seemed to stitch their fractured spirits back together. The reservoirs. Discovery rippled outward. By nightfall, 4 caravans had arrived, guided by my radio coordinates. They brought tools, welders, pipes, solar inverters, and manpower. Within 24 hours, we'd installed a basic pump system powered by a jury-rigged solar array. Water flowed uphill through hoses, filling cisterns we'd buried near the station. The hum of freshly running water was our new anthem. News of Echo Lake spread across the static like wildfire. Audio messages played on loop. We have found water. We have hope. Join us. Stations we'd never reached before relayed the broadcast. People tuned in from the plains of Nebraska, the hills of Arkansas, the fractured remnants of Kansas City. The voice that once spoke of desolation now beckoned them to life. Within days, what had been a solitary station became the heart of a budding community. Tents sprouted in the dust workshops for repairing gear, communal kitchens boiling water, for tea infusions of harvested herbs, greenhouses built from salvaged greenhouse panels and plastic sheeting. We planted seeds lentils, corn, kaolin raised beds, irrigated by drip hoses. The first green shoots pierced the gray earth 2 weeks. Later yet, the world beyond the safe zone did not pause. Dust storms still churned across the plains. Wildfires licked at distant horizons. Acid rain still burned exposed skin, and the werewolves remained a deadly specter. Their howls, distant but unmistakable, echoed across the night, reminding us that our new sanctuary lay on a fault line of danger. One evening, a scouting party returned with grim news. They'd discovered skeletal remains at the quarry's far edge raiders, picked off by the creatures, bodies shredded, bones scattered. Among them, they found a half-buried pack of dynamite fuses proof. The raiders had wanted to blow the hatch as a last resort. They would have flooded the reservoir or collapsed the tunnels to deny us our salvation. That threat forced us to rethink security. We built watchtowers from steel girders, strung razor wire along the perimeter. and installed motion sensors cobbled from old alarm systems. Every full moon, we hunkered down in the bunkers carved into the hillside, bracing for the beasts. Assaults, sometimes packs of canids mutated and monstrously large-tested our defenses, scratching at gates or howling just outside. We repelled them with flares and firebrands, but never without cost. In the quiet moments, I found time to reflect. The reservoir had changed everything, yet it had also changed me. I realized I'd chased hope for months, driven by duty more than belief. I had built barricades around my heart, fearing betrayal at every turn. When Talia first spoke the lullaby, I'd turned away. When Jonah's voice crackled on the airwaves months ago, I'd suspected a trap. I thought hope was a weapon that ruthless would exploit. Now I understood that hope is not a liability, it's a bond. Sharing water had forged ties stronger than any desperation. The reservoir's bounty was not just liquid relief. It was a shared miracle, a promise we could renew every sunrise. My broadcasts shifted to no longer warnings alone, but invitations. Invitations to rebuild, to collaborate, to reclaim what we'd lost. I wrestled with guilt. Had I acted too late? How many died chasing false echoes? How many gave up before the tap ran clear? I carried their memories as a solemn charge. Ensure no one forgets the cost of complacency. I grieved for Salam and his crew, for the church. Survivors I left behind, for the raiders turned unwilling martyrs to the beasts. Their stories found their way into my broadcasts, woven into lessons. When you find water, guard it fiercely, but share it freely. If you stumble, offer a hand. If you fail, learn and pass the knowledge on. As water returned, the earth around the station stirred. Dust hardened into crust, anchoring seeds that took root. We measured soil moisture, climbing from a paltry 2% to nearly 15% around the irrigation beds. Dandelions and purslane once scavenged for food grew spontaneously beyond our plots. Insects crept back, beetles and grasshoppers, followed by quail and lizards. A harmonic recovery, small and tentative, but hopeful nonetheless. Yet nature had its contradictions. Where water pooled, algae blooms tinted the surface green. The aquifer's chemistry remained uncertain. We ran DIY pH tests, filtered through charcoal and sand, but long-term toxicity checks eluded us. Birds landed near the reservoir, drinking and bathing, only to fall ill days later. We faced new problems, disease vectors, thriving in stagnant pools, mold in our greenhouses, spreading faster than we could scrape it away. Our triumph was brand partial. The reservoir was a lifeline, not a cure. The broader ecosystem still teetered on collapse. We could carve one oasis in the desert, but the desert stretched beyond our sightlines, unending and unforgiving. We formed councils to govern water usage, food distribution, defense strategy. Talia became our liaison, soft-spoken but unyielding in negotiations with passing caravans. Jonah's voice returned on the air one crisp morning with coordinates of a survivor caravan stranded in the painted hills. Together, we mounted a rescue, forging a supply line between us and the stranded group. Their gratitude was a reminder. Every life saved reinforced the web of human connection at night. Around communal fires, people shared stories. Children played under festive lanterns, fashioned from empty water bottles and oil wicks. Every tale Every song was a thread weaving us back toward the world we'd lost and the world we might build. I caught myself smiling something I thought I'd forgotten. I felt skin-tinged by hope, fragile but real. The reservoir had given us water, but it had also given us purpose. My voice on the airwaves no longer spoke only of survival. It spoke of revival. I taught other stations how to map aquifers, how to rig pumps, how to test water quality. I connected networks of survivors into a nascent federation's mall nodes of life laced across the fractured land. And I changed. The iron resolve that had driven me to isolation softened. I let people in. I shared my fears of betrayal, of depletion, of beastly hunts. I admitted my losses Lena's laughter, Anya's drawings, and with each confession, I shed a layer of guilt. I realized resilience isn't just tough skin. It's a living thing, shaped by tenderness as much as harshness. 1 month after the reservoir's unveiling, I climbed the quarry's rim at sunrise. The water's surface glowed salmon pink. Smoke plumes from distant wildfires curled on the horizon. A dust storm churned westward, its edge a wall of ochre. Werewolves howled in the trees below, and yet here we stood, a community of survivors armed with water and will. We would face the next crisis, whatever form it took, with buckets full of hope. We'd learn to capture rain when it fell, to hatch food stocks, to engineer new forms of power. We'd tell each other jokes. We'd sing lullabies for children born into this world. The dust storm advanced, but we were no longer alone or unprepared. We'd proven that even here-where systems had crumbled and monsters' proud life could find a way. The reservoir's water was our testament. With it, we'd sip deeply of possibility. As I tuned the transmitter for the night's broadcast, I paused before speaking. I thought of Salem's dream of wind turbines humming again, of Lena's hopeful smile, of Anya's center stage drawing of our family beneath a blazing sun. Then I pressed record and spoke into the microphone. Voice steady. Tonight, we have more water than we know what to do with. We have new friends and new tasks. The storms will come. The beasts will roam. But we are here. We endure. And together we will shape the world to come. The dust may return. The drought may deepen elsewhere. The full moon will rise again. But as long as that message travels through the static, we will remain human, hopeful, unbroken. And that, I think, is our greatest victory tonight. The wind carries a faint lullaby from the settlement below, children's voices dancing through the lantern-lit courtyards, mingling with the soft hiss of water trickling through new pipes. I stand on the station's rooftop, hands wrapped around a chipped enamel mug of barely warm tea, and listen. In that moment, the world feels both impossibly fragile and startlingly alive. We discovered water in darkness and blood, but water alone does not sap the soul. It does not bind broken families or erase the scars on Salem's daughter's arms. It does not undo the wildfire's charred hollows or the river's vanished currents. It does not still the howls of the beasts that prowl the moonlit outskirts. Yet that water clear as hope has given us a chance to kindle something more than mere survival. I think back to the day I first opened the hatch onto the reservoir's still surface. The chill that bit through my layers of soaked clothing awakened more than my frozen limbs. It thawed something inside me that I thought had perished alongside the old world. I remember the way Talia's laughter spilled into the quarry as we rolled the first barrels uphill. I remember the steady creak of the hand crank pump, each turn a defiance against the drought, each drip a promise to tomorrow. But hope is no shield against sorrow. Every sunrise reminds us of what we've lost. Lena's warm smile, Anya's giggle, the skyline of St. Louis glowing against an autumn dusk. I carry those memories like stones in my pockets, heavy, necessary burdens that keep me grounded. They remind me why I broadcast each night, why I share coordinates and instructions, why I coax strangers into community with my voice, because stories matter, because sharing what we have, water, knowledge, companionships, how we heal. Even as our oasis grows, the world beyond remains unmade. Dust storms loom on the horizon, their ochre walls hungry for flesh and iron. Acid rains still carve pockmarks into tin roofs and peel paint from corrugated walls. The purifiers scout our fences, eyes gleaming with fanatic purpose, plotting to seize our miracle or collapse the tunnels behind us. The beasts prowl, numbering more with each full moon, learning our patterns, testing our gates. We prepare, always. Watchtowers ring the perimeter. Underground bunkers stand ready for lunar nights. We harvest rainwater when storms break, funneling it into cisterns that whisper with each incoming drop. We experiment with geothermal springs rumored beneath the old power plant's ruins. Engineers once nameless voices in my broadcaster, now flesh and blood, welding pipes and mapping aquifers. Every precaution is a prayer that this new dawn does not flicker out. My own precautions come with inner reckonings. I find myself trembling at the thought of leaving the station even briefly to lead a rescue mission, though my bones ache for movement. I catch my reflection in the polished metal of a drum barrel and see a survivor shaped by compromise, cautious, fierce, sometimes too wary of kindness. I wonder if this caution saves me, or if it is a chain tethering me to loneliness. And yet, in the space between each broadcast, I gamble with vulnerability. I share stories of loss, of redemption, of laughter staking claim in ruined halls. I admit fear not, because it makes me weak, but because it makes me human. Those admissions echo back to me in voices crackling through the static. I'm here, they say. We're trying. Teach us more. Bring us water. Their words embolden me. Tonight's final broadcast will carry the same plea I've sent 1,000 times. Stay alive. Stay human. Share your water, your fire, your stories. When the world darkest, lean on each other. The reservoir was our miracle, once let it be many miracles to come. I will end the transmission with 3 beeps, a silence long enough to let the message sink in, then one last line, good night, and may we meet again at sunrise. As I flick the transmitter off, the world falls silent, but for distant laughter and the steady murmur of flowing water. The tea in my mug has gone cold. I sip it anyway, savoring its bitterness. Beyond the edge of the rooftop, storms gather, but the community below holds its breath in anticipation, ready to weather whatever comes. Hope remains fragile, single, thread woven through the fraying tapestry of this ruined world. It can be unraveled in an instant, a broken pipe, a breached wall, a single beast slipping through the watchtower gates. But hope can also be reforged again and again, strand by every hand that dips into the reservoir, by every voice that answers the call, by every soul that dares to dream of rebuilding. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I don't know if we'll survive the next full moon, or the next dust storm, or the next raid. But for tonight, the lights flicker on in the settlement's windows, and the children's lullabies drift uphill like lanterns in the dark dot. So I close my eyes, raise my mug in a silent toast to the brave and the broken, to the found and the lost, and murmur to the night. As long as we're breathing, we've got a chance.